Hi again everybody, I hope you're all keeping well. It's Jim here and I'm down on the allotment again today, bringing you another video. And this video is all about what you can sow in the month of July. Not a month that we often associate with sowing seeds, just like with June. It's the middle of summer and we've already sown many things many months ago, like in March, April and May. Those are the months where we think about sowing seeds. It's all systems go in those months. But July, we're already looking after the crops which we already have. We've got things growing away happily and we're actually starting to harvest some things as well. But in order to keep those harvests coming, we can actually sow more things in July, also known as successional sowing. There's more things we can sow in July. So because there's not that much time left in the growing season now, we can only plant things that are going to be harvested in a matter of weeks. And the things here are really fast growing crops. And some of those things we'll actually be planting for next year as well. So we're thinking ahead there as well. But before we get into this video, I'd just like to say if you find this video useful, hit that like button. It really does help out a small channel like mine. It makes a big difference, so thank you very much for doing that. So with all that being said, what are we sowing in the month of July? Let's get right into it. Now we're going to start off our list with some really super fast growing crops, and it's all your salad crops. And I've got many different things here actually, all leafy greens. I've got this mixed packet of mixed leaves. This is a really nice mixed packet of lettuce leaves, loads of different types in there. I grow these every single year. I've already made a couple of sowings of these. I may sow more in July. These are going to be ready to harvest around a month or two after you sow them, so you should get a crop before the end of the growing season with these if you sow some in July. Whether it's red leaf, green leaf, butterhead, cos, or different crisp leaf types, there are many different types of lettuce which you can sow in July so you can get a crop before the end of the growing season. And in fact, there are some which you can even overwinter and harvest if you're going to grow them in a greenhouse or a polytunnel. But do make sure you get them to a decent size first before you overwinter them. Now there's more salad leaves which you can sow in July. Rocket, I really love rocket because it adds variety to salads. Really nice peppery flavour. I do like rocket. I'm going to sow some more of those in July. I've got a bed of them out there, but they're not really doing much. They are still very small, but I think we're going to sow some more. Anyway, I might grow some in the greenhouse. Last year I did that. I planted some in a couple of containers quite late actually. I think it was around August time, maybe September, and I was harvesting them in the autumn months. So yeah, might do that again. More leafy greens, spinach, one of the healthiest foods out there, and this is perpetual spinach, so it's unlikely to bolt. It's harvested over a longer period of time. This is a good one for sowing in July. It'll come into harvest literally weeks after you sow it. Really quick growing crop. Now here's a really fast growing crop, probably the fastest growing crop that is on this list, and that is radish, renowned for growing so quick. This is going to be ready to harvest in as little as 4 weeks from sowing, especially in July. Things are going to grow super fast in July because it's warm. So radish, get some of them sown. I'll probably sow some where I've got some space. Well, it's getting really warm in here. I'm going to have to open the greenhouse door. It was raining before. British weather. Really can't make his mind up. Now the next thing on the list is carrots. July is the latest that I would sow carrots because it is getting on a little bit. But if you've got varieties such as early Nantes, which are a much faster growing carrot, then July is absolutely fine for sowing carrots. Autumn King on the other hand, which is what this variety is, it's probably a little bit late. I may sow some more. In fact, I've just sown some more because I had loads of them demolished by the slugs. So I am probably trying my chances a bit with them because they are a main crop. Winter storing carrot. I'm having a big problem with slugs and carrots this year. It's a real pain. Yeah, carrots, get some of them sown in July just fine. You can even sow some under cover actually in a bucket like I do. I like to sow some in buckets, and they'll grow very fast under cover, and you'll definitely get a crop before the end of the growing season if you do this. Now another one for successional sowing, which is quite a fast growing crop, beetroot. I've already made a couple of sowings of beetroot out there, but I may get another row of them sown in July, and these will take just a couple of months to mature. That's fine. Beetroot is a great one for successional sowing, and you can sow them in July as well. Now I've not actually got any of these seeds here because I've already sown them, but the next thing on our list is spring onions. You can get spring onions sown outside direct in July, and they'll be ready to harvest in around a month or two. Now when I sow my spring onions, I sow them in clumps of 4 or 5. Spring onions grow best in clumps, and you can just harvest them whenever you need them. So spring onions can be sown in July just fine. Now the next one is leeks. Now leeks are a funny one because I didn't actually mention them in the June one. I forgot to mention them last month. You can get them sown in June because leeks are usually sown, grown throughout the growing season, and then left in the ground over winter to grow and harvested through the winter. So if you were to sow these in July and get them to a good size before they go outside, maybe September, October, before the weather turns cold, you can leave them in the ground over winter, and you may be able to harvest some later in the winter and into the spring. So you might be able to get away with sowing some leeks in July. Actually, I'm not going to sow any more in July. I've already got quite a few of them growing already. But yeah, it says that you can sow these from March to April on the packet, but that's just a rough guide. You can probably try your chances and sow some in July and then grow them outside during the winter. Now we're thinking ahead in July for next year, and we can be sowing some things for overwintering. We've got some cabbages here, April and wintergreen, 2 nice overwintering cabbages. I can plant these in July and then get them to a good size and plant them outside in September. I can then leave them in the ground over winter and harvest them late winter, early spring. I've done this a couple of times and they've given us some really nice spring cabbages. And that brings me to purple sprouting broccoli next. That's another one which you can overwinter just like with the cabbages, and when nothing else is ready to be harvested in the early spring, when there's the hunger gap, when nothing's growing, purple sprouting broccoli will be there giving you plenty of lovely harvests. So get these sown in July, get them sown in modules, and then pot them up a month later into 9cm pots, and then in September, maybe October, plant them outside, cover them over, protect them from the pests. You'll have some lovely purple sprouting broccoli come April time. Now it's getting a little bit late to sow a lot of beans. I wouldn't really think about sowing runner beans now. It is getting on a bit, and other climbing beans, like French climbing beans for example, I'm not going to be sowing any of those in July. But dwarf beans on the other hand can be sown in July. They're a much faster growing crop than your runner beans and your French climbing beans. So yeah, another one for successionally sowing as well. I've got a load of them outside in a bed out there now, but I may sow some more of these in July for a quick crop before the end of the growing season. And that variety is called Tender Green, by the way. It's a really nice variety. I'm having a bit of a slow year with beans this year. I've had a couple of problems. The weather's been awful for a start, but then we also had aminopyralid as well. So we've had to do a bit of like a rescue mission with the beans, and we've had to move them about. But I think they are slowly coming on now, very slowly. I think we'll get there in the end. But I had to sow some more runner beans in June, which is a bit later than I usually would. Now we are coming to the end of our list now. The next thing on our list is just some more herbs. I mentioned these in June, but if you want to get them sown in July, sow them in July. I've got some basil, coriander and parsley there, but other things like dill and chives, get them sown in July. So I've got quite a few herbs growing at home in my herb planter, so I'm not going to plant any more of these. I've got some coriander and parsley in there, as well as basil. I've got plenty of things growing in there. Things are doing really well in the herb planter at home. But if you've not already sown any herbs, July is a good month to sow them. They'll grow really, really fast. Just do make sure you keep an eye out for those slugs. And if you're growing them in containers and you get to the end of the growing season and you still have some pretty decent plants, then you can move them at home on your windowsill and grow them over winter as well, especially things like coriander, parsley and basil. They're ideal for that, growing on a windowsill. Now we're going to go over potatoes as well, because we can now start thinking about potatoes for Christmas. Now, I had a bit of a disaster with Christmas potatoes last year. That is the yield. I have nothing to say. I sowed them at the end of August and the blight got them before they even managed to get to a good size. And I'm not joking, we got some really pathetic potatoes come Christmas time. The blight just demolished them in October and we didn't really get much. Now, I'm not going to be planting Christmas potatoes again simply because we have such a big problem with blight late on. I grow my first early, second early and my main crop potatoes and get a crop before the blight arrives. Plus I am growing blight resistant main crops. Yeah, I get a crop before the blight arrives anyway. With Christmas potatoes on the other hand, they will be growing right through that time period of when the blight is most active. So I'm not growing them again this year, but if you don't have a problem with blight in your garden or on your allotment, then you can start thinking about Christmas potatoes in July. Get them planted in July and you'll have some lovely Christmas potatoes come Christmas time. But do bear in mind, you may want to have somewhere like a greenhouse or a polytunnel to move them under in the autumn months when the frosts arrive. I grow them in buckets. Obviously if you're growing them in the ground outside, you're not going to have this option, so that would be something to consider. If you want to grow Christmas potatoes, consider growing them in containers and moving them under cover when the autumn frosts arrive. Now that list wasn't as exhaustive as the previous months of this year, like March for example. There was loads of things to sow in that month. Yeah, the list is getting smaller and smaller because we are getting quite late now, but these are just the fastest growing crops on the list, and these will give us a harvest in literally weeks. And some of these things as well, we are thinking ahead till next year as well. We're always thinking ahead and planning for next year. So I do hope you found this video useful and you found some inspiration from this video. If you did, then hit that like button. It helps out a small channel like mine a lot. Thank you very much for doing that. And if you've got a passion for gardening like I have and want to learn to grow your own food, then hit that subscribe button, press that bell icon, and you'll never miss whenever I upload new videos just like this in the future. So that's all for now guys. I will see you in the next one. I hope you all stay safe and happy gardening. Enjoy it no matter the weather.